Compassion is a beautiful concept. When it flows, hearts melt, and those who witness it are deeply moved. But studying compassion is not the same as feeling it. Let us for a moment set aside its beauty and focus on its study. Feeling and studying are different experiences. When we read a poem, snow becomes ice. When we analyze it, sunlight dawns. When Wittgenstein spoke, intuitions reigned in the audience. Russell urged him to shape each intuition into an argument. Arguments will spoil its beauty, Wittgenstein replied. So too with compassion, if we analyze it too closely, it may break its wings. Spinoza defines compassion as a form of pain. Pity is pain that arises when we perceive another person's suffering and imagine ourselves in their place. He explains, between pity and sympathy, misericordia, there seems to be no difference, unless perhaps the former term is used in reference to a particular action and the latter in reference to a disposition. According to this definition, pity, which is current-day compassion, involves action, whereas sympathy is a mental disposition. For David Hume, sympathy involves the exchange of emotional experiences. He relies on two key concepts, idea and impression. In the process of understanding, an impression transforms into an idea. However, in the case of sympathy, the process works the other way around. In sympathy, the idea generates impression. When we feel sympathy for someone else's emotions, what forms in our minds are ideas. We then experience a similar impression to what the other person felt, as though we were reflecting their emotion within ourselves. What happens to one person is mirrored in us to a certain extent. This impression may be somewhat vague, resembling a photocopy of the original emotion. This exchange of emotional experiences is different from the diffusion of emotion within a crowd. It represents a unique experience of another individual. This distinction is central to Hume's concept of sympathy, emphasizing the individuality of each person's experience. Sympathy is a natural emotion, whereas justice is a construct we create, making it somewhat artificial. Concepts like mutual agreement and promises share this artificial quality. Sympathy can be elevated to an ethical level. When transformed into ethics, it becomes benevolence. In benevolence, sympathy aligns with other similar emotions. The care shown in love and friendship is emotionally contagious. When friendship manifests, we tend to catch that feeling. Hume incorporates the social aspects of sympathy, such as friendship and care, into the broader concept of taste. Taste and reason can be distinguished from one another, While reason helps us discern truth from falsehood, taste allows us to experience beauty and ugliness as well as virtue and vice. Hume frames sympathy as the foundation for compassion and taste, repositioning the responsive elements of natural sympathy into compassion, where they can develop into a more human-friendly benevolence. In Hume's perspective, taste serves as the conceptual doorway to understanding the subtleties of emotional and sensible exchanges.
रसिया आवो ना
Though often entwined with a cluster of emotions, compassion can be drawn out and steadied on its own. Let us turn to the wretchedness of life, to those moments when people persist despite despair. In such conditions, compassion may emerge not as a mere sentiment, but as a stance, a way of being that pierces through existential suffering. Unlike abstract universal ethics, compassion feels its way into the particular. It listens where reason falters. It may not resemble other emotions at all. Perhaps compassion is not just a response, but an imagining of a new human condition. An ethics in which care is the central concept can be imagined, instead of justice being central to it. Individual freedom, autonomous life are central to justice, whereas relation and relatedness become important in care. While justice regards us in general, care plunges into particular situations where reason does not keep its distance from emotion. It is a form of reason in which emotion itself becomes articulate. Care is the ability to attend another's need. It always takes place in everyday life. Ethical care, which goes hand in hand with ethical responsibility, is not the same as ordinary everyday care. Care is not something imposed from outside. It is something awakened from within. Compassion is the capacity to be affected. Without it, life loses its pulse. Before reason arrives, compassion begins as a raw openness, the sensorium attuned to all that can be sensed. There is no direct path from compassion to ethics. Care must be the guiding force. It is care that guides compassion across the threshold, leading it gently into the realm of ethical thought and action. In his work titled Metaphysics and the Politics of Compassion, an Indian Perspective, Nisar Ahmed explores the liberating aspect of Advaita as reflected in Narayana Guru's philosophy and life, as well as in Nagarjuna's interpretation of Buddhist metaphysics. He also suggests deriving a framework for a politics of compassion from these concepts. Advaita metaphysics challenges the power relation that defines any existing form of samsaric life. But challenging an existing set of arrangements on principle is also politics. Samsaric life as well as Advaita critique or rejection of it are both instances of politics. However, Nisar states that Advaitins make a deeply political move. Advaita's vision of reality undermines the usual grounds for political debate because it dissolves the framework on which decisions about continuity or change are made. According to Nisar, Narayana Guru, in his version of Advaita, envisions an identical imagination, Samabhavana, that characterizes the context of disentangled embodied awakening. Through awakening, one realizes that the happiness of others is one's own happiness. This mutual care is Samabhavana. Nisar states, this could be seen as a politics without grounds. The outcome will not solidify into a script either, that is, for future politics. It passes without registering. Both creating a new arrangement and maintaining the existing one require power, making the occasion political. However, by awakening to the absurdity of existence, one becomes compassionate. In this state, one considerately reflects on which order of things will bring happiness to others. That is, before one begins to modify others' action, one already becomes compassionate. In compassion, one does not seek to change the other. This is an indeterminate state, and there is no method for compassionate action. Such actions cannot be repeated. Nisar elaborates on the conditions of being compassionate. Being compassionate itself is an end, and it is discovered anew each moment. In other words, unless one acts compassionately, true compassion has not come about. Compassion comes about when everyone acts selflessly for the well-being of the other. Compassion refers to the way one acts, not to the outcome. Nagarjuna holds that our ordinary beliefs arise from ignorance and mental dispositions, samskaras, which project a delusory world of experience, samsara. When one suspends these, being becomes groundless, because the self with intrinsic feature is absent.
मन चिंता मत भावरे भावरे
In a seminar, Nisar states that compassion is an emotional transformation. It doesn't have to be ethical, nor even cognitive. Emotion signifies something that evokes feelings. In practice, compassionate resistance is a form of resistance without resentment. It is not an action driven by a principle. Gandhi acts based on non-violence, which is a principle. This distinguishes compassionate resistance from non-violent resistance. One does not need to be compassionate to uphold a principle. How social justice connects with compassion depends on how you define justice. From an Indian perspective, suffering is the central concern. Any system in which people suffer is considered unjust. Compassion therefore becomes the means by which suffering is overcome. The condition of being compassionate in West is different. There one may attempt to be compassionate and the act itself is regarded as compassion. Here, that does not suffice. The experience of suffering in Christianity is also distinct. In Christianity, we suffer to redeem our sins. Nisar extends Buddha's notion of dukkha to systemic suffering. We live within a system as fish live in water. Thus, overcoming suffering means resisting the system. Who are you? You are your thoughts. The rest is merely the body. The social world composed of bodies functions like a process programmed by perhaps a matrix or by nothing at all. The agents are ourselves, for only if we change the program can the social world be transformed. The ordinary politician uses their state against the external state. This does not change the social world. True change comes when we abandon systemic, pre-programmed patterns. If we attempt to reprogram the process differently, the problem remains, for we merely create another programmed system. Only widespread enlightenment can dissolve this program. This is the alternative political action that should be considered a rightful suggestion. When we demand justice, we do based on certain principles, for example, equality. Yet equality is not a universalizable desire. Justice may be the desire of the poor. Those who believe that the survival of the fittest is best will not accept justice as an ideal principle for all to follow. Equity is a key principle necessary for justice. It is important to distinguish between equity and equality, as they are not the same. Equity can accommodate hierarchy, while equality cannot. For example, in a family where one member is weak and another is strong, it is just to provide more resources to the weaker member. Equality, on the other hand, would not allow for this kind of hierarchical consideration. Defining justice by pointing to injustice can be misleading because it leads to a circular definition. However, identifying instances of injustice empirically is a valid approach and does not constitute a logical fallacy. Let us consider justice as the absence of suffering. By doing this, we are not treating justice as an abstract ideal. Instead, we see it as the removal of suffering. Investing in temporary or superficial things lead to suffering, which is why Buddha begins his teachings with this notion. In our context, it is the system itself that causes suffering. Therefore, justice means overcoming the suffering caused by this system. Recognizing systemic injustice is only the first step in addressing it. Understanding what is just and unjust does not automatically lead to solutions for eradicating injustice. Instead, compassion serves as a meaningful response. I feel the pain of both myself and others. We all suffer together. And this shared suffering drives me to seek ways to alleviate it. Nisar begins to elaborate on the methodology of compassion by asking fundamental questions. What is compassion? Let us put the question aside for now. Where is it located? In a person? When you point a body and say a person, what do you mean? Buddha described the concept of Pudgala as a collection of aggregates, body, sensation, identity, mental formations, and so on. Alternatively, we can describe the body as a structure of neurons. So, who is actually experiencing compassion? Is it this impermanent and ever-changing structure? This is the ontology of compassion. When we engage in thought, are we truly thinking? No, we are conditioned to think. We enter a thought and then leave it, only to enter another and then another, and so forth. Compassion cannot inhabit such a fleeting space. You as a person are essentially a phantom. Society makes you believe you are a unit based on certain identifiers like Aadhaar cards. However, if we introspect, we often find only a blur of chaos. Can someone who embodies such chaos truly be compassionate? Can compassion exist in such a chaotic thoroughfare? How then can it serve as the site of compassion? One way is this: still the thoughts. Compassion can enter and fill the space. The solution to suffering is enlightenment. By enlightenment, Nisar means rising to the level of recognizing systemic suffering. You acknowledge it and confront it by enduring it and sharing the experience together. If we take another meaning of enlightenment, lightening the weight, it refers to making suffering bearable by reducing its heaviness and rendering it light. Enlightenment happens suddenly, spreading everywhere all at once. By recognizing suffering, and making it bearable, enlightenment arises.
தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா தடுபத்து ரேனாதினா ரேனாதினா ரேனாதினா